This series is called Foundational Nutrition. A lot of people have a different opinion about what this should be called. You've heard functional medicine, you've heard alternative medicine. Medical doctors tend to call this CAM, complementary alternative medicine. Basically, this is just natural health care. And this is written for chiropractors, medical doctors, other health practitioners that are involved with treating people. I don't want lay people to follow this. You need much more information than what's being presented here. But this is important work. Our medical costs are going out of control, and it's because we follow a disease model, which suits the pharmaceutical industry but doesn't do anybody else much of any good. Chronic disease responds better to treating the infrastructure of the body, to finding out what's going on and balancing it with nutrition, herbs, and things like that. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Most of what I'm presenting here is backed by research, and I want you to think of this as one way of doing things, not the only way of doing things. I'm trying to come up with a nutritional equivalent of a Dr. Seuss book. Simple things that work really, really well. I'm hoping that medical doctors that want to stay independent, because half of all medical doctors work for some kind of corporate entity, and chiropractors, acupuncturists, other types of practitioners can use this as a starting point to begin to help heal people with nutrition. I'm going to talk about Zorex a lot because they're not found on Amazon and they only sell to professionals. A lot of the vitamin companies now are owned by conglomerates. I used to use a lot of pure encapsulations. They're owned by Nestle now. Zorex is a family-owned operation, and they're put together by clinicians for clinicians. So we're going to cover basic things. So people that are new to foundational nutrition, functional nutrition, whatever you want to call it, can start after the second video. Each video will cover a specific condition. Those familiar with functional medicine will get familiar with the basics and know where the science lies. I've spent the last 20 years looking at research, and I'm stunned at basically how unscientific routine medicine is. Everyone thinks of, oh, that's where the science is, but it really isn't. They don't follow scientific method at all. Scientific method is about coming up with an idea or a hypothesis and then testing it and seeing how it works. And the drug companies will find a simple question and say, okay, well, will this drug make a change for us? Whereas in foundational nutrition, the practitioners are really delving into deep ideas. And when we go to the traditional medical people or you go to the pharmaceutical industries, they go, well, you haven't proven that. So they're dismissing a lot of ideas out of hand, and these ideas are what can really, really help Americans deal with the amount of chronic disease that we have. We're going to start with what if there was an entity that caused a cancer that never existed before, created a new skin disease and quadrupled cardiovascular disease in men over 40? It'd be all over the news. People would be wondering what it was, what can be done about it, and that sort of thing. But it's already happened. It happened to the Inuit in the 1940s. These were people that ate the same diet for thousands of years, and then suddenly military bases started being built in northern Canada, and they started working in the commissary and started eating the Western diet, the diet that we take for granted. And women started getting breast cancer. They never had breast cancer. Kids started getting acne. They never had acne. They quadrupled the amount of cardiovascular disease in men, obesity, all the health problems that we take for granted, and it's due to the Western diet. So in the 1930s, Weston Price, a dentist, traveled around the world and compared people in civilized societies to the same ethnic group living away from civilization. In the 1930s, it was easy enough to find people that had lived the same way they had traditionally. And he went through many ethnic groups and found that the quote unquote uncivilized people did not have the chronic health problems we have. They have very little cancer, heart disease, obesity, sinusitis, allergies, diabetes, reflux, and so on. Even their bone and teeth structure is better. He looked at teeth a lot, because you get into people at 3 and 4 generations into the Western diet, and they start having problems with their dental arches. He put all this in a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. It's very worth getting. And here's a picture from his book. The person on the left is several generations into a Western diet, and the person on the right is living with a traditional diet. So when you're treating your patients, start with diet. If it wasn't available 10,000 years ago, it probably isn't good for you. And we actually created a diet. We'll get into that. And a lot of times doctors are afraid to talk to patients about diets. I've seen people given diabetes medicine without much of a discussion about diet. And this is vital. And not in the terms of, oh, you can't have this and you can't have that. You need to express to your patient that there's a way to eat that heals. Diet can actually heal you. This is something that has not been integrated into our healthcare system. But a lot of times the doctor's afraid that the patient's going to say, "Oh, I can never have pizza again, or I can never have chocolate cake, or that sort of thing." And you can eat the way you want to live. You want to eat. The death rate in the United States is very close to 100%. But if you're sick, if you're having a health problem, you can use diet to make you better. And then you cheat later, but while you're trying to fix yourself, focus on your diet, because you'll have to take less supplements. You'll need less other kinds of care. Diet really works. So to get patients started, I created a diet called the Roadmap to Health, which is basically avoiding, sugar refined foods, all the processed stuff, chemical additives, things like that. And 75% by volume of the diet should be fresh produce, which is high in fiber and polyphenols. The polyphenols are things like bioflavonoids. They're things that you find in brightly colored produce that basically they're powerful antioxidants. They protect the cells. They bring down inflammation and things like that. The other thing that I added is the specific carbohydrate diet, which is remarkable similar to the paleo. You can just tell people follow the paleo diet, but a lot of times when you tell them to eat the paleo diet, they eat a lot of meat, and but you want them to get that vegetable. So it's kind of like an alkaline paleo diet. And the reason for that piece of discipline is that a lot of Americans have digestive problems, and a lot of the problems, Crohn's disease and so on, are caused because we eat too many starchy foods. 50% of our diet is complex carbohydrate, and some of us just fail to digest them. So we get GERD, we get irritable bowel syndrome, we get all kinds of problems like that. So for a short period of time, we like to follow the specific carbohydrate discipline, or the paleo diet. We also want them to chew their food until it's liquid and to drink adequate water. The booklet has recipes and menu plans. It's free. Email me. I'll give you my email address and send you a copy. I can even customize it for your office if you like. I put your practice information on there. Specific carbohydrate diet was developed in the 1920s by Dr. Sidney Haas to create celiac disease, treat celiac disease, not to create it. And the diet became more popular in the late 1980s because Elaine Gottschall, whose daughter was one of Dr. Haas's patients, found that it can help with Crohn's disease, other digestive problems, ulcerative colitis, because we eat too many complex carbohydrates, and they literally rot in our intestines. And she found that about a third of Crohn's patients, she could get them better simply with the diet. And also eventually they could eat normally. Okay. And this is the same thing as the paleo diet. It's no complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are, starches, potatoes, breads, things like that. But also something called disaccharides, which are single sugar molecules together. Table sugar is a disaccharide. lactose, which you find in dairy as a disaccharide. So there's no dairy, there's no wheat. And oddly enough, a lot of the foods that we're sensitive to are forbidden on this diet. Now, the roadmap to health is not a completely strict um, specific carbohydrate diet. It allows sweet potatoes and it allows quinoa because those are superfoods. And what I would tell you when giving it to your patients, if they don't have digestive problems, let them just follow the roadmap to health as it is. If they do have digestive problems, tell them that, yeah, stay away from the quinoa and the yams until you feel better. Okay, so the roadmap to health is low in inflammatory foods. A lot of the processed foods, refined foods, and that they create inflammation in the body and they make whatever health problem you have worse. Okay, it's high in fiber and polyphenols. Polyphenols are bioflavonoids, or things like resveratrol and lutein, things that you maybe read about in the paper. These are things that are found in brightly colored produce. And they're powerful antioxidants. They actually bring down inflammation. So this is an anti-inflammatory diet, and quite frankly, all chronic disease, even cancer and heart disease, are inflammation or have inflammation in them. I'm not saying we can treat cancer or heart disease, because you're not. You're treating the body that has that, and you're giving the body a better chance against fighting the disease. We don't. In foundational medicine, we don't really treat disease. We fix infrastructure. Okay. The other thing is it's high in micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, things like that. And one of the things that really tells me that medicine is not scientific is they ignore the idea of a functional deficiency. In other words, you don't have beriberi, but yeah, you could do better with a little bit of B1 because if you the the nutrients, vitamins, minerals, things like that, are cofactors for enzymes. So if the enzyme's an automobile, the cofactor, the vitamin is the ignition key. And if you as you deplete yourself in nutrients, your enzymatic activity isn't so good. Okay. The other thing, it's low in quote unquote allergens. I don't like allergens. The food sensitivity is a better word. People are sensitive to things, and by removing complex carbohydrates, we've taken away dairy, which has lactose, corn, wheat, soy. These are things that commonly bother people, and I won't call them allergens because it isn't really an allergic reaction. And in fact, finally, um, more traditional types of practitioners, registered dietitians, are testing, and this is available to you guys too. There's a place called Oxford Labs that doesn't test for hidden allergies. They test for whether they expose the blood to the food and if it creates inflammation. And they've created diets, and they're treating obesity and irritable bowel syndrome and allergies that way. Okay, so anyway, the roadmap to health, the other thing I would say about it is it's not a perfect diet. There's no such thing as a perfect diet. It's a good enough diet. I mean, you might find with your patients that, oh yeah, they're sensitive to eggs. You might want to take away eggs, or you might, there might be other things. And also, you usually have the patient try it for 30 days and then start reintroducing foods. And if you take away a food that's bothering you for a while, and then you eat it again, you get some kind of reaction. It'll bother you. Like maybe it'll upset your stomach, maybe you get a headache, maybe that sort of thing. And that's a way to identify the real problem foods in there, especially when you're coming off, and we're not going to tell them to eat the junk food anymore, but you can start not following the discipline of the specific carbohydrate diet. And people get better on this. I remember one fellow got rid of 20 years with sinus infections simply with the diet. I had a patient call me with Crohn's disease, was going to travel several hundred miles to see me to treat Crohn's disease. And I said, he asked if there's anything he could do in the meantime, and I gave him the diet, and I never saw him. And he called me and thanked me and said he went into remission and stayed there. The diet is powerful. Diet can heal, and this is something that medicine, you can't patent diet, so they don't do it. Medicine is largely about patents. And I don't want to criticize our healthcare system totally. Emergency care is second to none. We have wonderful surgeries, but when they start fooling with chronic diseases, more than likely they're going to make people worse rather than make them better. I mentioned polyphenol, so that I thought I would just show you, if you remember from chemistry, that's a phenol molecule. You'll notice all the double bonds. The double bonds can receive a free radical, and they're like chemical bulletproof vests. Free radicals like a chemical bullet, and the double bonds in the phenol is like a bulletproof vest. And a polyphenol has more than one. You can have two, three, four of these. This is resveratrol right here, but you see all these double bonds. This is a powerful antioxidant. And of course, a lot of your patients are going to feel like you did this to them. Oh, you can't eat buffet, you can't have this, can't have that. That's why I like to stress that this is not forever. This is till you feel better, and then you can choose whether you want to, like whether you want to cheat or not. You might get sick again, but that's that. Our patients are adults. I don't like the idea of being a food Nazi and saying you can never do this and you have to do that and you can't do this. I rather talk about using the diet to heal the problem that you have right now. And be kind to your patients, even if they're not compliant. They're addicts, okay? If you've read any of Michael Moss's stuff, he writes about the fast food industry. They actually hire neuroscientists. They'll hook people up to PET scans, feed them the junk food, and see how well the formula that they've come up with lights up their pleasure centers in their brain. Okay, so does it need to be more crunchy? Do we need a little more salt? Do we need a little more sugar? And they play with their formulas to get that pleasure response. And a lot of us, actually most of us, eat for pleasure. Like, oh, what are you going to have? Oh, what tastes good? What sounds good? And what you want to try to do is get in their head that eating to heal is a little bit different than just grabbing some egg rolls or a pizza or like that. But they are addicted, and so if they feel like they can never have this stuff again, uh, compliance goes way down. That's why I like the idea of talking about it as a healing thing. And unfortunately, medicine has never gone there. That's why I say they're not really scientists. There's all kinds of research on diet, and doctors don't say this to people mainly because the pharmaceutical industry controls what healthcare is. Okay, it's all based on a disease model. You find a problem. Okay, we found this one chemical that can maybe alter the problem a little bit. Now let's sell the heck out of it, and that's not healthcare. Okay, it works in emergencies. If you have a symptom that's absolutely unbearable, it's very good. But for managing your health, it's a terrible approach. It's a terrible approach, which is why I'm doing this. When you talk to your patients, don't talk about treating disease because it's not what we're doing. Their diseases will get better because we're giving the body the tools that it needs. And I like this model from Emmanuel Sharaskin. And if you email me, I've got this as a poster or you can print it as a handout. I think this should be discussed with every patient. And what he says is in the center of the circle, that's diet, structure, emotion, all the components of good health. If you have that, you go a little bit further out, you have good hormone function or good enzyme function, good hormone function. Your general biochemistry works well. You have good physiologic function, and you have no signs or symptoms. That's the healthy person. But say you eat a little junk food, okay? Well, then you get a little dark spot in the center. You're not perfect. You're not perfectly healthy. Things aren't working exactly right. And if you persist in it, then all of a sudden now you're not your enzymes aren't functioning quite like they should. Now you got to realize a patient in this situation doesn't doesn't necessarily notice or have any problems. If the situation continues, then the hormonal system's involved. For instance, say you eat a lot of sugar, okay? Well, you're gonna be depleted in nutrients, B vitamins and minerals especially. So your enzyme systems aren't gonna work so well. Okay, you keep it up, and now your insulin's involved. You become insensitive to insulin. Your adrenal hormones are involved, and so on. So you're starting to create a problem. And after a while, just general biochemistry goes a little bit screwy. And I got to realize a patient at this situation doesn't necessarily have any problems. They don't perceive that they have any problems. But what's beginning to happen is their stomach acid isn't being produced as much. They're starting to thicken their bile. They're starting to accumulate malfunction around the body. Not enough to bother them, especially, you watch how kids eat, they get away with it. But this is where our degeneration, our physical degeneration comes from. Eventually, you keep it up, then you start having physiologic function affected. And this is the patient that says, something's not right. I don't feel the way I used to, and all that. But they have tests and they have no signs or no symptoms. So the doctor says, no, you're fine. And that's that. Eventually, they begin to have signs, which are medical tests that show something's not right, and symptoms. Okay, now they can be in a medical office and be treated. They can have pain, diabetes, whatever, cardiac issues. But what you need to understand is medicine is working in those two outer lanes, trying to suppress the symptoms. Usually it's a single chemical does a single thing to the body. The problem with that is as you do that, you start rotting out the inner circle. Whether you experience a side effect or not, that drug is undermining other chemical functions in your body. In natural health care, we start working in the middle. That's why you start with diet. You start to identify things that the person might not have enough of, and you try to equip the body to deal with the problem. And this is the way to approach chronic disease, not to try to suppress a symptom with a drug. That always makes things worse. And it's not that drugs are always bad. Sometimes you have a fulminating infection, or you have intractable pain, or you have there are things that you do need drugs for, and surgeries, and things that direct that where you have to directly affect the symptoms. One of my favorite models is asthma. Okay, if you have a bad enough asthma attack, it can kill you. So the drugs will shut it down. Uh, but if you have asthma, before you get that chronic thing, if you start doing the things in the middle of the circle, your chances of having that terrible attack go down. So it isn't that one thing is bad and one thing is good. It's each part of healthcare has its place, and lately in America, the pharmaceutical industry has taken too big of a place, and people are just getting sicker. Right now, we're spending $4.5 trillion dollars a year. That's $13,500 for every single person in the United States. That's our health care bill. And whether you believe we need a single payer government system, well, you're going to pay for it in taxes. Okay, if you want it in the private sector, then your insurance premiums are going to go up and up and up, and then you're going to have people that can't afford it at all. But it's a drain on our economy, and a lot of it is because we do so many things wrong. And here's a graph. Okay, on the far left is 1960, and on the right is today. And that's the per capita medical costs per year. And it was $146 in 1960, but you see how it's just going up, and it's going up rapidly. And that's because a lot of us are sick, and the approach to the chronic sickness is just wrong. Like we went through COVID, and you can feel one way or another about the vaccines. I noticed a lot of people with vaccines still got COVID, but you never heard anything about vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin A, quercetin, and there's a lot of things that raw materials you can give your body to help it fight an infection. Not saying cure. Okay, what we're doing is we're fixing infrastructure so the body can deal with what it's dealing with. And the people that died of COVID, had inflammation. 35% of all Americans are walking around in an inflammatory state. So when a virus comes and you have to fight it, that increases your inflammation, and some people can't cope with it. If you bring your overall inflammation level down, you're better equipped to survive something like that. And Americans are sick. There's 100 million with insulin resistance or diabetes. 40 million with irritable bowel syndrome or something called SIBO. SIBO, not irritable bowel syndrome. They're the same set of symptoms. We got 50 million people with allergies. 37 million have migraines. 60 million have reflux, gastric reflux. 9 million have ADHD. 11% of the population is taking antidepressants. 25 million people have asthma, and 50 million people experience chronic pain. These are all things that if you do some natural health care with, you can actually bring these numbers down. And we're getting sicker. Okay, autoimmune diseases are increasing by 7% each year. Allergies, the number of people with allergies has doubled since 1970. Autism used to affect 1 in 150 children in 2000, and now it's 1 in 44. And I remember in 2000, we were freaking out at how common autism was already. Okay, Parkinson's disease has grown by 50% in the last 5 years. Celiac disease has been increasing by 7% a year, and 10% of our children have ADHD, which has increased 30% since 2011. And you can name any kind of chronic problem, and it's going up. Our diets are terrible, and the disease model that we're using, you're walking along and you're minding your own business, and suddenly a disease hits you. Now you have to take this one chemical thing to change the disease. That model is not serving us. And we are the answer. We start utilizing natural health care more and more. We can help a lot of people. A lot of people have been suffering for a long time. If you need any help with this, this is what I'm doing. Okay, and I don't charge. This is not a business proposition for me. Okay, and so my email is paulgvarnes@gmail.com. Feel free to contact me. I'll do whatever I can to help you in your practice. Lay people don't contact me. I'm not going to treat you. We'll find you somebody. Zorex International, like I said, family-owned business. They're never on Amazon, which I like that because they're the products I'm going to recommend, because I do not want lay people watching this and self-treating. That's not a good idea. So their number is 800-679-3027. Thank you very much.